In every new Pokemon game, new features are always involved which usually transform the game. The most recent generation gave us Mega Evolution, character clothing, as well as some smaller features such as Wonder Trade or, being able to sit down on benches. But however revolutionary these changes were, Pokemon Sun and Moon are sure to introduce some new shiny features. But what are they going to be? Well, I've plunged into the depths of my mind and discovered 5 things which I think should be implemented in Generation 7. They're quite broad and opinionated, so remember to keep an open mind. So join me and count down 5 features which would be great for Pokemon Sun and Moon. Watch the countdown, watch it with me now. So at number 5 we have online features. Now I loved dressing up all snazzy to show off my lemon styles. But how often did people actually see me? Well, for about half a second at the start of an online battle. Not that impressive. In fact, trading and battling kind of felt quite impersonal to me, so the first feature I'd like to suggest is some form of meeting point for trainers. Call it a battle tower or a trans-dimensional bridge between worlds, or whatever you need to call it, but it should involve being able to interact with other trainers in person. Better yet, have a secret base style system, where other trainers can come into your secret base without having to have permission. You could open it up. Additional features to add to the online world would be some battle scenery. No one enjoyed that cold blue arena after 5 or 6 battles, I think, and it kind of takes away from the depth of the Pokemon world when all you do is just go on Pokemon, do a few online battles, do 5 or 6, and then come out of it, and then you're just, left with the impression that everything in Pokemon is just cold and dead and blue. So I'd love to see some new scenery in the background of online battles, maybe some options. I did love the music selection options, and I think that could do with a little bit of an expansion. Maybe slip in some of the older generation battle themes. And now lastly, bear with me, I do kind of feel like they need to have some rules set up in Pokemon online battling. So maybe you could have Smogon's tiers. I know some people don't feel that strongly about them, but having it so that you could at least have some fairness involved. I mean, I know you can defeat all the legendaries if you're really, lucky and, maybe clever as well. But still, I'd love to see, just that classic OU, UU, and it can be optional, you can go for anything goes, but it's just my opinion. So at number 4 we have Advanced Trainer Customization. Now I flipped my noggin when I learned you could breed down a Pokemon's Pokeball. Finally my Weavile could happily reside in the luxury ball he deserved. But hang on a minute, if Weavile wants to live in a luxury ball, his mum needs to be in one, and if I'm trying to breed egg moves and pass down to nature, and bloody hell, it's just more effort than it's worth. Would it be that hard just to send out my Weavile, throw him into another Pokeball and let him live in there? So in Generation 7, I really think we should be able to choose what ball our favourite Pokemon are in. It would make those legendary catches quite simpler as well. And while we're at it, how about just slapping some stickers on Pokeballs, like a Thunderbolt symbol on my Magnezone's ball, or little symbols and graphics you could just slap on there. That would be quite cool. Or maybe when you send out a Pokemon, the effect which is generated by the Pokeball it's in, like if it's in a Dusk Ball, you kind of see the purple glow, and with the Net Ball you kind of see the net. Maybe being able to choose them would be actually quite cool. Another customization option, which would be quite fitting, especially for us online battlers, would be like naming your team, so that you could club together 6 or 4 or 3 Pokemon, however many you like, into a team name. Say it's called Team Destruction. And then when you lift that name out of the PC, it takes those designated Pokemon with it, so that you always know what that team is. And on the material side of things, the male protagonist in Generation 6 kind of got a little bit shafted in my opinion, with a less diverse wardrobe than the females, I think. And just because I'm a guy, doesn't mean I want to wear some swanky new shoes. And also the necessity for hats was a little bit much. I think take away from that and give some new hairstyles and stuff. Like, I personally like my hair long, so, add that in, that'd be quite swanky. And there's lots of other customization options which would be pretty cool, like the idea of having nicknames, or the idea, they briefly had that idea where, you fill out some sort of questionnaire and your likes and dislikes all show up. That was quite cool, but add it so that your character really feels unique would be smashing. And finally, of course, everyone's been requesting since Soul Silver and Heart Gold that we have our Pokemon follow us, and I think that's a really great option. I really miss it, playing those games through and seeing your Pokemon just tag along behind you, although it was a little bit much when you saw the massive Whale Lord or Onyx or something following you, but still, it was a really great feature and they should really consider bringing that back. So at number 3 we have the region of the game. Now the region of X and Y felt a little bit too simple for my taste. It was kind of just like we knew exactly where we were going in this big loop, and we kind of just followed the points of A to B to C to D, and I think there needs to be less of that. Like in the older generation games, sometimes you'd have to double back on yourself, or revisit towns and cities that you'd already been to, talk to NPCs which were key in the game's events. I also do think the NPCs in general need to be a little bit more lively and say some more interesting things. Recently you kind of talk to them and it's as if they're hand-holding you. They're acting purely as game mechanics, just saying how great Pokemon are, or did you know you can feed Pokemon berries, something along those lines, and I think they need to give them a unique dialogue. It's just little tidbits of information, you know? And I think the different vibes and sort of feel of each town and city needs to be memorable and unique as well. Sometimes you breeze through a town, part of the story and all that sort of thing, and then you just go through it and you forget about it. And you don't even remember the specifics of what the town looked like a lot of the time, unless it has interesting music, which a lot of them do. But apart from that, there's not much to go on. I think there needs to be less forests and grass in general. A lot of the routes that we've been through have just been have a couple of trainers down there, maybe a pond, maybe some trees and grass, and the wind is blowing, and it's all too pretty and lovely. I'm not saying we should delve into the industrial wasteland or something, or go down some needle-ridden alleyways, but it should be a little bit more varied. I mean, certain Pokemon like Klinklang or Magnezone or Weezing or Muck need to live in some sort of environment which reflects their personality types. And I also do think it's about time we brought back Night and Day, because it is Pokemon Sun and Moon after all. And it'd be interesting for those features to fit in some sort of story way as well. But a lot of people have been calling for that back since the days of Gold and Silver. And another thing which people have been loving since Gold and Silver is the 2 region feature, which hasn't been featured since. And it's a really interesting mechanic to have it that you go to another region after you get the 8 badges, so you have 16 badges in total. That was lovely in Gold and Silver, and they should really bring it back. But they could connect it to X and Y, or they could introduce a new region altogether with the 7th generation region. But it makes the world feel a little bit more like events are going on and you have an impact. It's not just like each game is isolated in its own little region. So these are some of the things which I think they should bring in, but there's a lot of world building that needs to go into. X and Y did have a lovely world, but it did feel a little bit like it was just you were the only thing which moved in that world. At number 2 we have a varied generation. So the pace of new Pokemon has been pretty balanced up until now, and I actually liked the amount of Pokemon we got in Generation 6. Not having that massive tidal wave of 200 new creatures meant I got to know some of the new Pokemon a little bit better than I usually would have. Mega Evolution also makes older Pokemon who might have been forgotten get some much needed limelight. Or that's how it should have been, in my opinion. Some Pokemon didn't really need a Mega. But still, having that variation between old and new is great, and that can also incorporate evolving other older Pokemon as well. Love Disc. Giving Pokemon memorable locations is pretty key to this as well, I think, such as like encountering Klinklang in Chargestone Cave in Black and White. It also adds a little personality to the Pokemon, and gets boring when you just see random Pokemon popping up when you're walking through the same old grassy route and you see maybe a Machop and a Coughing together, and you just think, what are these 2 Pokemon doing on the same route together? What are they even doing here? What attracts them to this area? So keeping the generation entertaining is always a tricky task, but it's something Game Freak should be considering. So at number 1, we have a better story. Now I know Pokemon isn't exactly known for being some sort of grand storytelling master game, but still, it's got its unique charm, and most people are excited to hear what the new Pokemon game is actually going to be about story-wise. So I think there needs to be a little bit less of the hand-holding, not so much of a love, kindness and courage makes the world go around type of feel. Like I say, NPCs are always telling us how we need to love each other and all this type of thing. But I'm still not calling for this to be like Grand Theft Auto Pokemon or anything above the usual rating of a Pokemon game, just a slight maturer edge for us older players. Not that I'm old. But still, I think there needs to be a proper evil team. I've always thought it'd be great to see a team return, kind of like in Gold and Silver where we saw Team Rocket return. And we haven't really ever seen that happen before, apart from in those games. It's always a new team which has the same kind of motives or drives as the previous generation's team. So I think that could be interesting to bring something like that back. There needs to be memorable gym leaders, I think, as well, because over the last few generations, I've kind of forgotten which gym leaders were which. I remember generation 1, 2, 3, and 6 most of all, but 4 and 5 are blurry for me. I think I remember 6 mostly because of the graphics and not much else. They also seem to be goody two-shoes a lot of the time and they help you out and all this sort of thing. I liked it when gym leaders kind of gave you a more oppressive feel, like they were someone to beat and someone who were going to stand against you somehow. I think they should focus on you as an adventurer, as someone who's going out into this world, not some sort of prophesized child who will save the day and capture the legendary Pokemon and defeat the evil team. You know, the Pokemon does have its formula, and it works for it, of going from, you know, a small town at the start, and you defeat the gym leaders, you come across the evil team, you catch the legendary, you save the day, you go on to fight the Elite Four, and you become the champion. That is the set formula in every Pokemon game, and I think sticking to that is probably the way to go, but they could mix it up a tiny bit. Have something unexpected, not so much that it's like an absolute plot twist and kind of goes back on what Pokemon has already established throughout its numerous games already, but still something a little bit different from the usual set story. I think having a proper rival is probably integral to this, and I do kind of miss having a rival who you actually kind of didn't like. More recently they've had your rival be a friend or someone who you have more of a friendly rivalship with, but I liked it when we had Blue in the first generation and Silver in the second generation. They were kind of like not very nice, and their kind of redemption stories as they go along in certain ways was also quite good for the story, I think, in terms of like they saw they were treating their Pokemon bad and they realised that you were doing it the right way and all this type of thing. That can work. And I think a better story is hard to work into a Pokemon game in general just because it's Pokemon, and the story has always been difficult to touch upon because there's lots of strange morality issues to think about, so it has to remain essentially a kid's game, but it also has to have a slight mature edge in my opinion. Okie dokie, that's it for this countdown. Well, let me know what you thought in the comments, let me know if my ideas were good or bad, and please do remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I do hope to get some more up soon. There's going to be an avalanche of new videos from me, and yeah, there's a lot of new features coming in Pokemon Sun and Moon, I imagine. Nobody knows for sure yet, there's no concrete news whatsoever really, and as soon as new information is released, I'll be commenting on it like mad, so keep an eye out for that, and have a lovely day.